When it comes to buses, you really should speak to someone here who knows better than I do. But aside from the difficulty that they have had with maintaining the lift, and they've had tremendous problems maintaining the lift, but it's the design. In the Grumman buses, I've heard people in wheelchairs complain bitterly. Those were the ones where the door, the accessible door was at the front, and they could come up the door, but then getting past where you saw the token, where the money goes, if you had a wheelchair that wasn't certain dimensions, you couldn't get past it. So even though you could get up, you couldn't get on. So you have to be very careful in the design. And then the other thing was, in the GM buses, it's a very, very heavy door because of the wheelchair lift. And so the new GMs that are coming in have a power bar that you can press so that the door will open more easily. Because, for instance, it's really hard for me to open that door and for people to open the door.
Where did I see any GM buses?
If you get on an accessible bus, it's going to be a GM bus.
Oh.
Where are you going from here when you leave here?
I haven't decided.
Because there are accessible bus routes right out in front of here, which means that, on the next block, if you waited for a bus, hopefully you would get one.
How long would I wait for a bus?
Well, in the rush hour, you wouldn't wait that long, providing you get one where the lift works.
I think on an average of 20 minutes wait, would that be?
Oh, I don't think you'd have to wait. I don't think you'd have to wait that long, because when you go out there on Madison Avenue, there are a lot of GMs, and all of those GMs are accessible. But one never knows whether, in fact, the bus driver, is telling you the way it is, because in the rush hour when the bus is crowded, he may not want to. What he has to do is he has to pull up. He has to go to the back. He has to stop the bus and go to the back to activate the lift to let you on. And so I don't know whether they will do it every time. They are supposed to do it every time someone is there. I don't know whether they have. I have seen people on those buses in wheelchairs. I have never seen it during rush hour. I've seen it only here, if I leave here at 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
What time does rush hour end?
Well, the peak of the rush hour is over after about 6:30.
Right. Because I feel that sort of luggage and things I've got, I'd like to try non-rush hour.
Well, then the rush hour is closer than it used to be. Originally, rush hour was sort of really from 4 to 7 in the afternoon, but I think that if you got on at 6:30, you would be all right.
Ways of tackling it. One is disability awareness training.
So that's very
for
important.
all transport staff.
I think that's extremely important, because it will only work as well as the people who come in contact with the disabled people who want to use it, because you can have all the equipment in the world, and if you have a bus driver who doesn't want to pick someone up, he can always say the lift wasn't working. And they are supposed to, when they take a bus out, the bus driver is in fact under orders to try the lift before the bus goes out to make sure it's working. Of course, we recently got rid of all of our Grumman buses, which means that we got rid of 800 new accessible buses, and so that there aren't as many accessible buses as there were before, and the bus fleet is short, so they may send out buses now where the lifts in fact do not work. But I think there are tremendous abuse when it comes to kneeling buses and to wheelchair lifts, so that I think that kind of sensitivity training is the utmost important.
It's not just a question of, problem is getting a wheelchair on a bus. But we see that the advantages are also for people with shopping, the heavy shopping, prams, and elderly people.
Yeah, people, with shopping carts and things like that are really not supposed to get on the bus during the rush hour. There is something about that, except that it isn't really, I don't think, followed that much. But if the bus driver wanted to challenge somebody with a stroller or someone, he in fact could during the rush hour. Here, they have tie downs for the wheelchair, so that, in other words, if you're in your wheelchair, you happen to be more fortunate, you use a wheelchair, but you can manage without one, but there are people in wheelchairs who cannot. And those buses are for people who are in their wheelchair, who must remain in the wheelchair, and so that's why the
what I'm
lift,
looking at, yeah.
and that's why the tie down, so that once you're in the bus, you know there's something to tie the wheelchair down so it doesn't start rolling around the bus.
Well, that's another thing I would like to look at, how the buses, how wheelchairs are tied down, because there's a lot of arguments as to which system is the safest and the quickest to instigate.
You're going to meet with the Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association tomorrow. Well, they certainly have all that information up and down and in and out and backwards and forwards and so on.
Through lower cases of everything. Yeah.
And also the speed of which you can get someone in a wheelchair on a bus, tie them down, move the bus on, is crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
We're on 5th Avenue, East 49th Street. We're just past the Swiss Centre. We're just going over the road. It says, coming up to a bus centre, don't even think of parking here. No standing express. That's an express bus. Whoops. Uh-oh. Step again. Bus PA 2319. Accessible bus. But we've caught this bus. It appears that the lift might not be in operation. Let's see what the driver is going to be doing. But he's gone to Curtis Quay. It's opened. The lift is in operation. No, it doesn't matter. Let the ramp. I'm on the lift. Brake. My helper's just got up the step. I'm just about to move up. The seats are up. And I'm now in the bus. Ramming, yes, I think we have contact. We're just about to be moving. By this time, I had gone up in the lift and I had been fastened to the bus's safety mechanism for people who have wheelchairs. The importance is that, in my view, their system is safer than the English system as recommended by the Department of Transport, which is also very bulky. The Department of Transport's recommended tie-down situation to stop wheelchairs. And even the one, as I've seen used in South Yorkshire, that is also very awkward and takes quite a long time. The net result would be if a South Yorkshire bus had a crash, then all the energy of the crash, which affects the wheelchair user passenger, will be diverted into the wheelchair, and the wheelchair would collapse, and the wheelchair user could get injured by that actual collapse, but the wheelchair would not move from the point where the wheelchair user is tied down during an accident. On the American example, as used in Denver and in New York, it allows a degree of give, and what is likely to bust is at the very most a wheel from the wheelchair user. It also relies from the wheelchair user's own brakes in addition. So does South Yorkshire. The main advantage is speed, and in my view it is possibly safer to have a system which has a bit of give but not that much give. I will back on to the New York story.
My subway station is 96th Street in Broadway.
Yeah.
And they wanted to, at one point, close down one of the stations. See, there's two, 94th Street, 96th Street, service the same exit.
Yeah.
So, I'm nervous. So they wanted to close down the 96th Street entrance and only use one, so they'd only have to pay one salary, for one of the entrances. And a bunch of us got together and sort of had a little demonstration within the subway the night they were supposed to close it. And there was people singing, and there was a whole crowd of us sitting on the subway tracks and singing, and it was like keep the gates open was the thing, and it worked, and they kept it open. Oh, right, it's great, yeah. How many of you? Like 50 people.
See, your subway does close. I mean, like that,
Right.
whereas in London they close about 1 o'clock.
Yeah. Well, that's the difference between London and New York, not just the subway systems. Because a lot of things close early in London.
How do these buses compare with the older non-accessible buses? I mean, for bumping and rides and things like that. I haven't been on the other ones.
Well, I think the other ones are really in a state of disrepair, so that's why they're... Yeah. I think the others probably did too. I don't know. We had double-decker buses for a while.
Yeah, they didn't work.
Yeah, why not?
Well, apparently, technically, they couldn't handle your roads. But I think you have Leyland Tunnel. Not route buses. Did you open the doors open at the front? Or did you get on at the back?
It was the front.
A friend has informed me since coming back to England that the bus referred in this conversation is a Fleet Line bus, apparently, and apparently London Transport also had technical problems with Fleet Line buses and withdrew them, although I haven't checked this fact out yet.
And they also had problems apparently with your traffic lights.
Oh, they were too tall.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they couldn't handle them.
And I think everyone around is really fascinated with it.
I went on a bus from just by the Hudson River, this bus, a few days ago, and everyone clapped when we
Yeah.
worked.
Yeah. It's great.
Okay. I'm going to stop the bus after this stop.
One more, 106. Hey, the stairs there? Yes, we're on.
Yeah, next stop.
Stairs at 106.
Oh,
Alright, we'll go up to 108.
108.
There are stairs climbing up. Keep up 108. Then I can really see one. This is a statue on the right hand side. This is 106 right here. This statue. You have to get up the stairs. That's the driving top. 108.
I've just pressed stop bus. We're at 108. The bus has just stopped. I'm timing now the time it takes to get me off the bus. Thank you for the ride. The driver's forgotten his key, he's just going back to get it. Could you face me towards the left? Hello? Whoops. I'm stuck on the bus. The lift doesn't appear to be working. Ah, he's pressed the right button now. So stop. No, please, it's safer this way.
Come down.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Thank you. What do you think was wrong there?
The operator.
Oh,
He's very tired.
sorry. Have you had a long shift?
Yeah. Where'd you go? Let him go down.
In fairness to the MTA, that was our only experience when we had delays because drivers couldn't find the key. On the whole, it was actually a lot faster than that. On the bus, we met a guy who... A guy is an American word. A man who is a waiter, and he started to tell us one or two things about New York and traffic and things. and dispel a few myths.
Newark, and people just go for it all the time. Doesn't matter what the sign says.
Are people ever arrested for jaywalking?
Are you kidding? No, never. Hardly ever. In fact, they've just begun to crack down on bicyclists running streets, red lights. You know how they just cruise right through it? But they've just begun to do that because it's kind of car-oriented, automobile-oriented. The subway, the buses, and the cars.
Do you ever see any wheelchair users using the subway?
Subway?
Yep.
Actually, no. I have seen one man who was amputated from the waist down, and he used to skate along on a roller skate.
Yeah.
And put his body on a roller skate and to skate along. And he'd have these big arms pushing himself along.
Yeah.
I've seen him 2 or 3 times, but
May I ask what you do?
I'm Ed Rees. I'm an urban designer for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Does that mean that you work with subways?
Yes, almost exclusively, actually, subway stations. A lot of what I do has to do with the zoning resolution in New York provides for bonuses for buildings that connect directly to subway stations. And I'm involved in the negotiation and design of those connections with the developers. In addition to that, I review station designs that the transit authority is undertaking under the Station Modernization Program.
Are you planning on any new stations?
We are building a few new stations in Queens, and that has to be the last expansion program that's on the books right now. So most of our stations are being modernized from the original stations.
How old is they?
System opened in 1904, so they range anywhere from 80 to, I guess the most recent stations, other than the new ones being constructed now, probably opened in the 1930s. So they're anywhere from 80 to 35 years old. None of them were designed to be accessible to handicapped. A few are just incidentally, since a couple of them are at grade out of the far reaches. The MTA has opposed making the entire system accessible via ramps or elevators, due primarily to the cost involved. We think it's something $1 billion effort.
When you say opposed, do you mean opposed forever and ever and ever, or opposed for a short? I mean, when I mean short, I mean in years.
Well, I don't think that we anticipate there's going to be any great influx of money from any source to pay for any great renovation.
Supposing you had the money tomorrow, would you be? Are you opposed to the principle, or are you opposed because you don't see yourself getting the funding to do it?
It's much more because of lack of funding than the principle.
Because there's a difference.
Oh yeah, I mean, since we do have a policy in which all our new buses are accessible to handicap. It's not that sort of thing. It's just the extreme cost of retrofitting some of the systems.
In comparison between the underground, which I've been using for about 11 years, and the subway, you've managed to get very little step from the subway train coach to the platform. Far better ratio than in London. But it usually is either step down or step up.
Yeah, ours are the height above rail is standardized at about 4 feet, and unless you've got a problem with the suspension on the cars, it's generally it's only off by a couple of inches or so. There are some stations that we have problems when the platform's on a curve. You have a sometimes substantial gap in between the platform and the car. And in some stations we have gap fillers, which are mechanical devices to extend out the car. Primary example of that, I guess, Union Square and South Ferry.
Do you bar wheelchair users from using your escalators?
I don't know if we have any policy barring them at all. I've never seen anyone do it. I know I've seen films of wheelchair people who were perfectly capable of going up escalators. I've never seen it done. I don't know of any policy about barring it though.
London Transport claim that they've got no statistics on it, but it's dangerous. But their regulations going back to 1934, when people used to have bath chairs. I think a lot of it's to do with that attitude rather than the modern back wheel wheelchair. You do occasionally get problems with people who are blind injuring themselves.
I believe there have been a couple of incidents, but I'm not really up on that. I think there was an incident the other day in which a blind lady fell into she was French line between the two cars, which is not encouraged in any case, blind or not. And she I believe fell in between.
It's transferring, I mean, the doors are actually wider in between the cars than in London. Is transferring permissible if the vehicle is stationary? Or not? I mean,
it is permissible while it's stationary. Permissible in no cases is it encouraged for people walking into the cars.
yes.
It is, I believe, it's illegal to do it while the train is in motion. But I'm not exactly sure what the regulation is. It is certainly discouraged. There are signs up saying don't do it.
Is I'm sorry, I haven't gone between cars, so I don't know what. Is there are you in the open space?
Yes, there's an opening in between cars, and the big problem is there's a gap between the two platforms, the two end platforms on the car, and when the train is either starting up or braking, that gap can close, and if you slip in between it, you can lose a limb, if not more.
Because in London, when they have it in between the cars, you can't actually get out of the carriage system, only through the side doors.
Yeah.
I'm just
In our newer cars, you can't go between the cars. It's the older cars that allow the transfer in between.
how old are those cars?
Offhand, I don't know, but we can look at the poster outside later.
Right. I just want to know roughly how old was your oldest, and I expect your newest is this year, or?
The newest is not yet this year. We were supposed to be getting our new ones in Japan. We have one train in operation, 10 cars. It's undergoing test run right now. The expected life of cars in the next 20-25 years. Although we've had gaps on that have been in operation more than that.
I was told of some with wicker baskets.
But I haven't seen any of those lately, but there have been a few around, at least.
At the meeting I went to yesterday at Columbia, I spoke to your deputy president. Is it?
I don't know.
Oh, well, And he was saying that there was a lot of people complaining about the transit system for a variety of reasons. And he was saying that the doors tend to burn out if people hold the doors.
Yes.
See, we don't have that in London. We don't. I didn't speak at the meeting because it wasn't my place to.
Yeah, in London they're passenger operated.
Mm.
Here they're not.
And in fact, the new ones in London are going to be a button press, the new ones for Jubilee Line, and they're going to have a sound when the train stops, like Paris Metro, which is in the Quai Ville. High-pitched sound, because a tannoy system, I don't know what to call, a voice system saying you are blah blah, is very unclear for people. They don't understand it. And a similar problem to your tannoy type system is on the Piccadilly in London, but it's very unclear to the passengers. How do you close your subway?
No, it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
In London, it's closed from about 1 o'clock, and there's night workers who clean up and clear up.
Yeah, that's a substantial problem here because we can't get the amount of maintenance that we probably should have. One of the reasons being is the station's never closed. It also makes renovation of the stations hard too because they're always in use.
How many stations do you have?
Depending upon how you count them, about 465. And I think it's something like 700 route miles of track.
And how many passengers?
Passengers per year is something about 900 million now. It used to be over 1 billion. It slipped a little bit in the last few years. It's somewhere in the 900 million.
In London, they're getting in dot metric systems at each station, saying that your tube will be there in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, blah blah, to 1 minute, and also that they can carry advertising. And the dot metric
there's a similar system in San Francisco, Washington. We don't have such a system. In some stations, we have what are called train annunciators, which are essentially it's a sign that lights up and says the train is coming, usually when it's in the previous station. Some stations, particularly during rush hour, at the busier stations, there are platform conductors who announce the arrival of the trains, and they can sometimes tell you how many minutes it's going to be from and where it is in the system, so you know whether or not the express or a local. But in general, we don't have a system like that.
Do you have tickets inspectors to check on fraud?
No, because the system operates by you placing a token in the turnstile as you go in, and after you're in, you're in. And it is also not a zone system. Once you're in the system, you can go anywhere in the system.
Do you have percentages on fraud? I mean, in the Newcastle Metro, it's another system which I looked at recently. It's estimated that up to 20% fraud. It is called here fare beating.
There is a substantial percentage, but I don't know if anybody knows what that percentage is. You can find some evidence of it in the fact that the turnstile counts, the counts of people putting their tokens in turnstiles and going through, have fallen off dramatically in some areas of the city, although you can't tell by looking at the number of people waiting on the platform or the crowds in the trains that there's been a diminution of the number of people using the service.
Do you ever have a sort of an army of inspectors who do swoops on stations?
We have the transit police occasionally stage sweeps throughout boroughs and arrest upwards of about 200 people in one day occasionally.
What is the relation of a transit police to your control of direction of where they go, or are they more directed by New York Metropolitan Police?
They are under the direction of the New York City Transit Authority. They are a separate police force from the regular city police.
So you have control. You can say, we'd like you to do a spot check up that station and that station.
I should say the Transit Authority has control, not the MTA. I should explain the difference between the MTA and Transit Authority. The MTA is a state agency which controls several transit systems in the region. The Long Island Railroad, the Metro North Commuter Railroads, Staten Island Rapid Transit, the Manhattan and Bronx Surface Transit Operating Authority, which runs the buses in Manhattan and Bronx, and the Transit Authority itself, which runs buses in Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island, and the subway system. The subway system is operated by the New York City Transit Authority, which is a city agency. The MTA essentially was set up in the late 1960s in order to better coordinate the various transportation systems in the region. We are much more a policy-making agency, and while the other subdivisions are the operating agencies.
Do you have wheelchair users on it, something used, if they can handle the stairs?
There are wheelchair users who use the system. How they get down, I don't know.
Have you had any accidents reported?
There are none that I know of. Now, a substantial number of the wheelchair users I've seen usually have a companion. Presumably how they negotiate the stairs.
That's how I negotiate them. But you've seen a number?
Yeah, they're there.
You see, in England, there's sort of basically, there are two different problems. We don't have anti-discrimination legislation. And there is the discrimination angle. And then there's the access angle. And although they have connections, they are separate issues.
Yeah.
Here you've got a similar type of bad access, where I find your system not being so deep as LT's. But your access is a little bit better, although you have less escalators. But if you can cope with the bad access, then you're perfectly okay to use the system, if I understand correctly, in New York.
Yeah, there are no restrictions in place preventing anyone from using the system as long as they can negotiate.
Yes, I mean, you see, there are two different. Do you see what I mean? There's the different arguments. Has there been restrictions?
None that I know of.
Well,
New York's subway system started out as private railroads. The outer reaches actually were railroads, and then the subways themselves were essentially two companies that opened at the turn of the century, and by 1940 had essentially gone bankrupt. And they were taken over by the city, and the city had built a third line at that time, and all three were consolidated into the system.
well, London was about 5 different lines, 5 different companies who had different gauges and different tool cases, and etc., and well, it's taken many years for London Transport to pull the whole thing together into one, and very costly.
Yeah, the gauges here are all the same, although the tunnels on the older system are smaller, so they can't use as large power essentially IRT system as they can on the IND system, which is the newer system.
On your carriages, do you have an emergency button to press in case of an attack of a passenger or something?
The only thing we have for emergency is an emergency brake cord, but that is not recommended in case of attack. That is only this very serious situation which train has to be stopped immediately.
Would the passenger have access to that, or is that driver?
That's where the passengers can get out of here.
Do you allow people with large amounts of shopping items?
Yeah, we do. There are, I know in terms of the subway, there are regulations against carrying bulky objects, although the enforcement of that is sporadic at best. I mean, technically, if you take your bicycle up to the subway during rush hour, you can get a ticket. Or you actually take it on any time, you can get a ticket, although people do it all the time. On the buses, I imagine there are similar regulations, but their enforcement's not very high.
Because it would seem to me that, in one respect, pitching that wheelchair symbol, but I mean, majority of people who have needs for lifts and things aren't wheelchair users, but are people who are elderly and people with prams and large amounts of shopping. Do you allow unfolded prams?
I don't. I believe the regulations call for them to be folded up on the rim of the bus.
Because it seems to me that you could use that lift to encourage people who, walk by on certain routes, which weren't, and obviously not people.
As far as I know right now, if you do have a stroller or something like that with a baby, you got to take the baby out and hold the baby in your arms and hold up the.
Do you know how many buses you have?
How many buses do you have? It's in here somewhere.
There's various news stickers.
This is the 1984 version of our little handout here. It says we have over 4,000 buses. Next largest fleet in the country is Los Angeles, which has 2,800.
Does it say how many are accessible? I know you've just taken 800 off.
Yeah.
Were those 800 were they General Motors ones, or were they these space age things?
Well, there are two buses here, so-called advanced design buses. One group was built by General Motors, the other was built by Flexible, which became a subsidiary of Grumman. So they are now called Grumman Flexible. Although the original design was done by another company. Well, Flexible was a mutual company.
They're the ones with the problems, aren't they?
The Flexibles.
Yes.
Those are the ones that take that service. Essentially, from what I understand, a lot of the problem has to do with the structural integrity of the bus, because the body of the bus itself is part of the structure. There were problems with cracking of the frame and other various steering problems. That's essentially why they're not in service now.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about complaints. So the Grumman buses are the like two buses in one. I've seen buses where you've got a flexible thing at one point. Very long ones.
Articulated buses. There are a few that are being experimented with at the moment.
Are they accessible for wheelchairs?
I don't know.